What if the sea was not water but a grave? What if every wave was a hand, reaching up to drag you down? For centuries, sailors whispered of voices in the black sweet as honey, sharp as knives. They followed the song, and the ocean kept their bones.
Did you see it?
Mermaids, sirens, sea demons, not lovers of men but predators of flesh. Their beauty is a mask, their kiss a drowning. And beneath the waves, the seabed is littered with the skulls of those who believed in music. So listen carefully the next time you hear singing from the dark water. Ask yourself, is it the wind, or is something calling you home to the deep? The sea has always had a voice. In the old Greek poems, they said it came from the cliffs where women's faces leaned out of the stone, their bodies feathered like birds, their song sharp enough to cut through the roar of the tide. Men heard it and leapt willingly into the foam. Homer described the shore as white with bones, the skin still clinging to them, the remnants of those who believed the song was meant for them. Odysseus, lashed to the mast, survived only because his ears were sealed with wax, yet even bound his body strained toward the sound as if pulled by invisible hands. But the song did not stay in Greece. It traveled north with the wind slipping into colder waters where pale figures with hair like ice rose from the fjords. Fishermen told of nights when their nets overflowed as if blessed, and of mornings when the boats drifted home full of fish, but without a single man left aboard. Ballads whispered of a kiss that tasted of salt of arms that tightened like the tide dragging their lovers into silence. Farther east, the voice took on a darker shape. In Japan, there were tales of the Ningyo, a creature whose face looked more like a drowned corpse than a maiden.
What is this horror?
One fisherman in the 13th century is said to have presented such a being to the court,
Ningyo?
and soon after a plague swept the land, killing thousands. To eat its flesh was to live forever, but eternity was poisoned. Villages vanished, storms struck without warning, and whole families wasted away beneath the weight of the curse. Even today, in a temple by the sea, a shriveled body is displayed behind glass, something with the teeth of a man, the hands of a woman, and the tail of a fish. No one dares to say whether it is real. The tide carried the stories farther still. In a Dutch village, after a great storm, they pulled a woman from the shallows with skin like scales. She never spoke a word, never learned the prayers of the church, and when she died, she was buried without ceremony, as though the villagers feared what rites might awaken. Centuries later, the traveling shows of Europe and America displayed mummified mermaids, grotesque creatures, stitched from monkey and fish. But even among the frauds, there were always one or two whose origins no one could explain. And beneath all these tales, something lingers. Sailors still whisper of hearing music on nights when no ship sails nearby, no radio hums when the waves themselves seem to breathe a melody. Sonar has recorded it, low, haunting frequencies that rise and fall like singing with no source found. And when the song comes, it is followed by silence, a silence heavy enough to drown in. Different seas, different names, but always the same shadow rising from the deep, beautiful or grotesque, blessing or curse, it does not matter. The hunger is the same, the bones are the same, and the voice of the sea has never stopped singing. The sea is vast, yet the stories are never strangers to one another, from the Mediterranean to the northern fjords, from Asian shores to the islands of the Caribbean. The same figure surfaces half human, half something else, always waiting at the edge of the known world. Carvings on ancient Greek vases still show women with birds' wings crouched on rocks above the waves, their mouths open in song. Not myth, but decoration for the living reminders, placed on the very vessels that once carried men across perilous waters. To the Greeks, the siren was not a bedtime story. It was a warning stamped into clay, as permanent as the voyage itself. Far away in Scandinavia, ballads were etched into memory long before they were written down. Songs of sea wives have fru, who could bless a fisherman or claim him, appear in manuscripts as early as the Middle Ages. But older still are the rune stones that show beings with fishtails and crowns figures, tied to the water's power carved into granite as if to remind the living who truly ruled the coast. In Japan, the memory took another form. Scrolls from the 13th century record an offering to a shogun, a preserved Ningyo, its body a grotesque blend of fish and human. And in a temple by Lake Biwa behind glass that has stood for centuries, there is still a shriveled figure, small, twisted with teeth, too human to be a trick of wood or fabric. Whether artifact or fabrication, pilgrims kneel before it, even now treating it not as spectacle, but as relic. And in the west, after storms along the Dutch and Flemish coasts, Chronicles describe women pulled from the sea with scales instead of skin. In one tale, she was baptized, clothed, and kept among them for years. She never spoke a word, never learned their prayers, and when she died, she was buried quietly as though the villagers were ashamed of what they had found. The record remains a single line in an old ledger. A maiden of the sea lived among us and could not be taught. Across oceans and centuries, these fragments lie scattered like bones of a single body. Pottery and runestones, scrolls and chronicles, relics and songs, different tongues, different images, yet the same shadow returning again and again. Too similar to dismiss as coincidence, too strange to accept as true. Perhaps that is why the myths endure, because they are not simply tales told in darkness, but half-buried memories carved, sung and written by hands that swore they saw something rise from the waves. Science has tried to silence the sea's voice to strip the myth of its mask. Biologists insist the mermaid was nothing more than an exhausted sailor's mirage, a dugong lifting its calf above the water, mistaken for a mother's embrace. Explorers from Columbus to Hudson left notes of creatures glimpsed at dusk, not fair to look upon, one captain wrote, yet almost maidens in form. Hunger, thirst, and distance could make any eye deceive itself. And yet some traces are harder to dismiss. In caves along the Mediterranean coast, paintings were found shapes half fish, half human, drawn beside ships and nets. Their pigments dated thousands of years before Homer tell of beings the artists must have believed were real. On Norse runestones carved into granite that still stands today, crowned figures with tails are etched among waves as if the sea itself had rulers carved into memory. Then there are the relics. The cabinets of curiosity once displayed grotesque mummies, shriveled torsos sewn from fish and monkey paraded as mermaids. Most proved to be frauds, but not all. In Japan, behind glass in a temple, there still lies a body twisted and small, with the teeth of a man and the hands of a woman. Tests on the cloth binding it return dates from the 1700s, long before Western showmen ever arrived. Priests whisper of another hidden from view, too grotesque to be shown. A single photograph surfaced in the 1930s, an infant's face with scales along its arms, then vanished from record, withdrawn without explanation. And sometimes the discoveries are more recent and more unsettling. In 1967, divers off Iceland surfaced with bones unlike any known creature. A rib cage too narrow for a whale, too curved for a man adapted for swimming. Sent to Copenhagen for study, the fragments disappeared into storage, never to be seen again. In the Kuril Islands, fishermen unearthed skulls, sharp-jawed, needle-toothed, too small for seals, too alien for humans. A Soviet team collected them. The archives mention their arrival, then fall silent. Even the sea itself has been caught whispering. During the Cold War, hydrophones meant to track submarines recorded something else, low resonant frequencies swelling in patterns too ordered to be mere ice or quake. The most infamous was the bloop of 1997, officially dismissed as shifting ice. But declassified notes suggest harmonics repetitions, tones layered like a chorus, rising from a depth where no whale could swim. The longest recordings have never been released. Bones that vanish, paintings older than myth, preserved bodies locked away, songs recorded then buried in silence. The official explanations are always neat, always dismissive. Fraud, mistake, misidentification, but beneath the neatness lies something restless. The sea remembers, and every so often it returns a fragment, not enough to prove but enough to haunt. Perhaps that is why the sea has never stopped singing. Not only because something may be out there, but because the ocean is the mirror of ourselves. Every tale of the mermaid is a tale of desire dressed in salt and foam. The Siren song is nothing more than the sound of longing so sharp it can split a ship in two. Sailors feared the rocks, yes, but more than that, they feared their own weakness, their own hunger to follow beauty into ruin. In the north, she was the sea wife, the promise of plenty, the embrace that could also suffocate. To hold her was to gamble between feast and drowning. In Japan, she was the Ningyo, a body that tempted men to taste what should never be tasted, to grasp immortality with bloody hands, only to curse their homes, their families, their very names. And in the West, the half-woman of the waves was always a woman, her beauty a mask stretched thin over hunger, her kiss a drowning. The sea itself becomes the oldest symbol. It is the womb and the grave, the giver and the devourer. To see a woman rise from its depths, half human, half other, is to see the truth of water itself. It nourishes, it seduces, it kills. The mermaid is not simply a monster. She is the ocean wearing a face we cannot resist so that we remember who is master. And so the bones on the shore, the relics behind glass, the songs recorded in the deep, they may be evidence of creatures, or they may be something older, something buried inside us. The fear that what we desire most is also what will end us. If every myth is a mask, then perhaps the mermaid is the mask of the sea itself, a face we gave to the vastness so that we might understand it. But behind the mask is something older than our worlds, something that does not need us yet, shapes us all the same. For what is the ocean, if not the first graveyard we ever knew? It is the place where the bones of our ancestors sank when they first dared to leave the shore. It is the endless reminder that the world is larger than us, hungrier than us, older than us. To imagine a woman rising from those depths is to give a voice to the silence, a shape to the hunger. Perhaps that is why the story repeats everywhere in every tongue along every coast. It is not just the sea that remembers it, it is us. A memory older than nations, older than gods. A memory of being small before the waves, of listening to a sound we could not name, and of knowing that it wanted us. The mermaid, the siren, the Ningyo, they are not merely creatures. They are the part of us that knows desire will always lead us too far. That beauty and death often wear the same face, that the call we cannot resist may be the one that ends us. And so we return to the shore again and again, listening to the tide as though it might answer. Not because we expect to see a face in the foam, but because deep down, we already know the song has never stopped. It is not out there, it is inside us, and yet the ocean does not belong to the past. Even now, when satellites watch the skies and sonar maps the depths, the same shadows linger. Naval archives speak of recordings locked away frequencies, too regular, too melodic to dismiss. Operators swore they heard not noise, but voices, a chorus echoing through black water. The files were marked classified, then sealed. Some were erased entirely. Others survive only as whispers from men who should never have spoken. There are rumors of specimens too. Bones locked in university vaults mislabeled as unknown cetacean. Skulls boxed and shelved, their teeth too sharp, their jaws too narrow for any known species. Requests for access are denied. Papers vanish. Photographs blur as though the record itself is afraid to be kept. And still sailors speak of nights when the sea hums, when the waves carry music no machine should detect. Those who hear it say it coils into the ear like a breath sweet and heavy, and once you notice it, you cannot unhear it. So the question remains, were mermaids, sirens, and sea demons ever real? Or are they still here just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment we sail too far and listen too closely? The sea has always had a voice. Perhaps we were never meant to hear it.